So I find that one of the inspiring topics in the teachings of the Buddha is the teachings around citta, so C-I-T-T-A, which is often translated in English as mind, or sometimes and maybe in context is also translated as state of mind, and maybe there's no difference between mind and state of mind. The mind here, as I said yesterday, is not a thing. It's not like we can see the mind in some clear, like take a microscope in the brain and discover where the mind is. The mind is more of a gestalt, it's more of the sum total of our mentality, of how the mind works. And so it's not a thing. And so because of that, maybe because of that, the Buddha never talks about letting go of the mind. He talks about letting go of form, of feelings, of perceptions, of mental activities. And he also talks about letting go of something that we've come to understand in the West as consciousness. The Pali word is vijnana. And it's possible that vijnana should not be translated as consciousness. There's a whole history of about maybe 300-400 years or so, 300 years maybe, of the Western use of the word consciousness. It's kind of coined in just, in relatively recent times. And but it's kind of entered into our language, this word consciousness, and the idea of it probably in a deeper way in the last 100 years or so. And we take it now, as many of us, as kind of second nature. It's obvious what it is, and it's often held up in religious circles, spiritual circles, meditation circles, as something really ultimate. And there's ideas of cosmic consciousness, ultimate consciousness, different states of consciousness, altered consciousness. And so it gets really, that word, consciousness, gets a lot of association, a lot of power, a lot of projection, a lot of expectations and hopes around this word. And a lot of people will feel that somehow a broad state of consciousness is somehow ultimate and really profound. And I certainly don't want to diminish the ultimate feeling of it, the profundity of states of consciousness, states of awareness. But what's fascinating is that for the Buddha, whatever that is, if it's vijnana, this word that we translate as consciousness, he says, let go of that, let go of that. And sometimes he even treats it as a kind of a problem. Clearly it's problematic, this vijnana, this what we translate as consciousness. But he never says that about citta, about mind. Maybe mind should be translated as consciousness, but consciousness also has a sense in English of something that knows, and the state of mind, I'm not sure exactly if it's something that knows, but it's a broad tone or mood or feeling or sense of the mind. And sometimes that state of mind can feel fragile, it can feel sluggish, it can feel agitated, contracted, and certainly sometimes the state of mind doesn't feel good. And in fact, some of the sufferings, the dukkha, that this Buddhist practice is meant to alleviate, is experienced as kind of a vice-like experience of the mind or the heart, where it's really tight, irritated. Mind is like rough sandpaper, perhaps, or the mind, it feels just so miserable in our minds, oppressed by it. So sometimes the mind can feel that way, but the mind can also feel the opposite of that. We experienced, and so the word citta is a very fascinating word. That this is what used to translate as mind, because the word has many other meanings, or homonyms, same sounding word. We would spell the same way. And but the dictionary for citta also has the word for brightness as a definition for citta. Also wondrous or wonderful. And so there's maybe a little kind of idea that the mind is something really, not exactly in itself, but it's related to something wondrous and bright. Sometimes the mind is called luminous in Buddhism, teachings of the Buddha, or clear or clean. The mind, it becomes clean. And not that the mind is inherently any of these things, because the mind is not a thing that can be inherent to anything. Maybe it's a little bit more like a hologram, or something that doesn't quite exist by itself, and you could put your hand right through the mind if you ever see it. It's not there, but it's still a mood, a feeling, a sense that can be very powerful, very significant for us, and so significant that, as I said, often when the mind is suffering, it's really oppressive. When the mind is happy or peaceful or clear, the mind feels quite wondrous, quite bright and open. So, and much of the Buddhist path of practice is done in terms of the mind, and that's sometimes it's done so instead of personal terms. Instead of saying I'm training myself, we're training the mind. We're developing the mind, and we're liberating the mind. And this is, I find fascinating, that plenty of times the Buddha doesn't say that a person gets liberated, rather the mind gets liberated. And some of you might find it a little bit disappointing to find out that you will never get liberated, and that's not the name of the game. But your mind will get liberated, and your job, whatever you are, whatever the you is, job is to help the mind experience liberation, to be free, to bring it to some kind of beauty. And this idea that the mind has the potential for beauty, for luminosity, for brightness, for cleanliness, I find phenomenally inspiring. But also that the mind, the other thing that's even more inspiring, is that the mind is not a thing. Because it's not a thing, it's malleable, it's shapeable. We're never stuck with our mind. We might be stuck with our brain, and in whatever way the brain works. But the mind, we're not stuck with the mind. It's kind of the field within which our practice has its effect, its influence. That as we develop more concentration, more mindfulness, more letting go, more equanimity, more wisdom, more strength in the practice, in the mind, that the mind begins to whatever we call the mind, to say the mind is, starts to have a wondrous feeling, wonderful sense that we can experience. And one of the things I also find wonderful about this word citta, the way it seems to be used in the suttas, is that it's very personal, the experience of it. So don't go looking at a Buddhist text or listening to a Buddhist teacher like myself for a definitive definition or description of how the mind is experienced, and then try to make sure that you have that experience too, or feel bad because you don't have it the way it's described. Your mind, you are shaping your mind. You're this thing that's being constantly morphed and changed and shifted. That's something that's arising within you, with all the cause and conditions of how your inner life works, and how your attention works, and what you focus on, and how you're thinking or conceiving. It's a dynamic thing, so it's very personal. So it's more a discovery of how you experience it. Then you don't have to be concerned about discovering what the right way to experience the mind is, or what the right mind is, or how the mind is supposed to be. But you can, as we feel the mind, become aware of a mind that has an ouch to it, and a mind that has an ah. And this very technical terms, in Gil language, ouch and ah, is meant to kind of give us lots of room to not get caught up in the details and try to be right or wrong. Or it's a very simple thing. Oh, that's an ouch. The state of the mind doesn't feel good. Or this feels good. And the direction of Buddhist practice is in the direction of the ah, direction of the beautiful mind, in whatever way that you define or experience or see beauty. Luminous mind, clear mind, clean mind, spacious mind, peaceful mind. So it takes a while, and you don't have to kind of be in a hurry to experience some of the wondrous ways the mind can be experienced. But as the anapanasati develops, and as we become calmer and more settled, going through the steps, especially after step 8, where we're activity. As mental activity relaxes, it means we're not so fixated on the what we're thinking about and wanting, but we're beginning to rest back into the easy chair of the mind. We're resting back and just allowing and feeling and sensing the overall state of the mind, and breathing with that. Breathing in, experiencing the mind. Breathing out, experiencing the mind. So thank you, and we'll continue tomorrow.